morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told out of Voice of Radio. So today, we need to continue looking at what decks are good in Sword and Shield, which decks are worth playing, and giving you guys a complete list, as far as I can, of all the good, viable decks you should be playing with and testing and considering in the Sword and Shield metagame. And today, ladies and gentlemen, it is time to have a little bit of a chat, a little bit of a gander, a little bit of a peruse of Hitmonchan. You see, ladies and gentlemen, Hitmonchan is back and winning in the Sword and Shield metagame, except it never really went away. And there aren't even really many cards from Sword and Shield that make a difference here. As I'm looking, I'm basically seeing two cards from Sword and Shield. One is a nice little helpful one-of, and one does actually make a huge difference. I know, right? There is actually a new Hitmonchan that did come out in Sword and Shield. As of at the moment, I'm not seeing a huge amount of play and love for Hitmonchan. Maybe things will change, and we do have that lovely paired artwork with Hitmonlee, but as it stands at the moment, unfortunately, we're not seeing a huge amount of love for the new one. Now, Hitmonchan itself has that really nice hit and run attack, whereby you do yourself 30 damage and flick to the bench. I mean, you may switch to the bench. A lot of the time, you're going to want to switch to the bench. 30 damage, switch to the bench. Okay, fine. It's not stunning, but we have ways of making it way better. But then we're also playing a little bit of Hitmonlee. Now, Hitmonlee is really very cool as well. Now, this is the one from Team Up, and for one fighting energy special combo. You can only use this attack if your Hitmonchan used hit and run during your last turn. This attack does 90 damage to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. So you're not doing a huge amount of damage here, but a lot of people will have a Jirachi on their bench, or they may have a Malamar on their bench, or something along those lines, and that is going to give you a nice, cheeky, easy KO on them. But then we also have the Hitmon Top, which did actually come out a set later in Unbroken Bonds. One fighting energy. You can only use this attack if your Hitmonlee used special combo during your last turn. This attack does 60 damage to each of your opponent's Pokemon, and spreading 60 for a single energy on a basic is nuts good. So now we've got this really good trio of cards. It's really very, very fun. You don't have to do this. It's an option. Now, you can essentially just use Hitmonchan and then pop in Hitmonlee whenever you like. Hitmon Top is more awkward because you can only use Hitmon Top after having used Hitmonlee. So you're not often going to be able to use Hitmon Top, and when you do, it's not always going to be easy, because your opponent is going to be prepared. You're going to give them a turn. If your opponent sees you use Hitmonlee, that is basically saying to them in a giant loud voice with pointing, oh yeah, I have the option of Hitmon Top next turn. So you need to be a little bit careful there. Now, that's most of the Pokemon, but taking a closer look at the list, we do actually have a single copy of the new Hitmonlee. We're not playing the new Hitmonchan, but we are using the new Hitmonlee. And the reason is that the new Hitmonlee has an attack for 2 fighting, 1 colourless energy that does 80 damage. Meh. But if you've got Hitmonchan on your bench, you do 80 more damage. Oh yeah, that's pretty good. Now you're doing 160 damage for 2 fighting and 1 colourless energy. Now, it's still quite expensive in a deck that doesn't have energy acceleration, but I'm going to do a little bit of spoiling here and tell you that we do play Karate Belt, so that is going to help us actually pay this. It's a nice little tech. We then see 1 copy of Diancie Prism Star. It lets your fighting Pokemon do an extra 20 damage. So now it's 50 and flicking to the bench, and we're getting a little bit better. We do have 2 copies of Oricorio. You only ever really need 1 at a time. If you had a Pokemon KO the previous turn, you get to draw 3 cards. You don't really ever want more than 1 because it doesn't stack, but it's there. It's nice if you have 1 prized. Now, important to note here that we're playing a single prize deck, and I'm going to show you Lily's Pokédoll in a minute. You are trying to force your opponent to take like 10 KOs in order to win the game. that means that something like Oricorio is going to be absolutely huge at getting you extra cards. Although I do need to mention that Island Challenge Amulet then becomes very important. You attach it to Oricorio, it takes away 100 HP, so it goes down to a 70 HP Pokemon, but then it only gives up one prize. Island Challenge Amulet's pretty important here. The whole point is you're playing a single prize deck. Putting a 2-prize Pokemon on the bench would kind of ruin that. And then we got a couple copies of Jirachi. And I know a million different decks play Jirachi, sorry. But the reality here is, very simply, you are running to the bench. So you need to put something in the active. And if you put Jirachi in the active, then you can use its great ability. Or after a Lily's Pokédoll gets KO'd, you whack a Jirachi up, use its ability, look at the top 5 cards, find a trainer, put it in your hand, Jirachi goes to sleep, and then free retreat it using a skateboard. So essentially every time a Lily's Clefairy doll gets KO'd, you get a free use of Jirachi. It's pretty awesome. Plus, getting Jirachi KO'd can be better than having an attacker KO'd. Cool. Now, in terms of your supporter line here, it's very straightforward. We are playing Cynthia. Shuffle your hand into your deck, draw 6 cards. It's the best supporter we've got. And we're playing Rosa. Now, Rosa is pretty awesome. Rosa says that if you had a Pokemon KO during your opponent's last turn, you get to search your deck for a Pokemon, which you're going to need to attack, a basic energy, which you're going to need, and a trainer card. Any trainer card you like. Remember, you're playing a single prize deck. You're playing Lily's Clefairy doll. You're having a lot of Pokemon KO during this game. If everything goes well, you've had 9 Pokemon KO'd and your opponent hasn't won the game. Something like Rosa is huge. Now, I keep mentioning Lily's Pokédoll. If you're unaware, it's an item card that you play down as a Pokemon. It's got 30 HP, but it doesn't give up a prize when KO'd. So you hit with Hitmonchan, you flip to the bench, you whack Lily's Clefairy doll active, and if your opponent takes a KO, they don't get a prize. And if they gust around it, you get to put it active next turn. It's pretty gosh darn good. Now, there are a couple of other cards that are very important here. We play Martial Arts Dojo as our stadium of choice, and we play Vitality Band as our main, not the only, but our main Pokemon tool of choice. Martial Arts Dojo, if you've got basic fighting energy, you will, it's the only one you play. You do an extra 10 damage. If you're behind on prizes, you do an extra 40 damage. And Vitality Band is just an item card that lets you do an extra 10 damage. So we said that Hitmonchan hits 30 damage and flicks to the bench, and that's true. But Diancie Prism Star now puts it up to 50. Vitality Band puts it up to 60. Martial Arts Dojo puts it up to 70, or if you're behind on prizes, puts it up to 100. And now you've got a basic Pokemon, single energy, you're hitting for 100 damage, and then hopefully you're whacking a Lily's Clefairy doll in the active that doesn't even give up a prize when KO'd. Yeah, this deck gets much better very quickly. Now, we are also playing a copy of Karate Belt. It reduces your attack cost by 1 fighting energy if you're behind on prizes. This is basically how you make Hitmonlee work. But the other thing is, if you're attaching to Hitmonchan then flicking to the bench, you'll often have a Pokemon KO that doesn't have any energy attached, which essentially buys you extra attachments, which means you will actually probably, fingers crossed, have enough time to get the energy on Hitmonlee manually. Definitely something we need to have a think about. A skateboard is obviously pretty huge, but it is very much Jirachi-centric. An Island Challenge Amulet we've already mentioned, but again, that is just for Oricorio. The big card from Sword and Shield that really helps this deck out is Quick Ball. Quick Ball is huge. Quick Ball lets you discard a card from your hand and search for any basic Pokemon. This is a deck filled with basic Pokemon. Pre-rotation, we didn't have a good way to search non-GX basic Pokemon. The best we had was like Pokemon Communication. It was not a good idea. And that's what makes Hitmonchan much better in the Sword and Shield metagame. It's Quick Ball. And I know that's not the most interesting way around it, and I'm sorry. And we could mention Hitmonlee, and that's cool. But it really is Quick Ball. It is also worth mentioning we play 1 copy of Energy Retrieval here, which did get reprinted in Sword and Shield. Lets you grab 2 energy from the discard, put them in your hand. Pretty good. We've got a copy of Energy Switch. Lets you move an energy from one Pokemon to another. Also really good for getting Hitmonlee going as a surprise Pokemon. That's pretty gosh darn nice. We've then got 1 copy of Adventure Bag to search out our tools. I've told you we got a bunch of different tools. And we actually play Lana's Fishing Rod that lets you get a Pokemon back and a tool into your deck. Again, we actually play, weirdly here, 4 different Pokemon tools. Now, there is obviously a copy of Reset Stamp. Your opponent has few prizes remaining. Now they've got few cards in their deck. Ha ha ha. We then also see 4 copies of Custom Catcher. This is your gusting of choice. Play 2 at the same time, gust any Pokemon into the active. We got 3 copies of Switch, I want to say, might be 4. 4 copies of Switch, because you need to get your Pokemon in and out the active regularly. Switch. If you're playing a hit and run deck, if you're playing Jirachi, both of those need Switch. We play the full 4. And a bunch of Pokegear 3.0. Helps you get your supporters. You're only playing Cynthia and Rosa. You're only playing 4 of each because you're only allowed to. So this firstly lets you find your supporter, but secondly make sure you find the right one at the right time. I like Hitmonchan. I like hit and run decks. I like fighting decks. No, it ain't no Don fan, but it's still a very fun deck. And Cosmic Eclipse helped. Cosmic Eclipse came in with your Lily's Pokédoll and your Oricorio and things of that nature. Made the deck a lot better. And Hitmonlee and Energy Retrieval are nice, but it really is Quick Ball that makes this deck work. That is the big difference, and I know it's just 1 trainer card, but make no mistake about it, this deck is approximately 1 billion times better now that we've got Quick Ball. So ladies and gentlemen, I want to know what you think about this. I want to know your opinions on this deck. I want to know if you think it's good, if it's viable, if it's going to crush, or if it's still not quite good enough. Let me know in the comment section. Go nuts, me nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWassy, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that good stuff, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can do exactly that. And please do make sure you're checking out youtube.com/WassyPlays, where you can find out about a whole bunch of games that don't have Pokemon in, but are still pretty gosh darned awesome. But by far the most important thing as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.